Right. What's happening, class? I know we haven't done one of these in a while, but I hope you're ready to get back into the swing of things. Our goal now for you is for you to be able to solve one-step equations. Alright, so first, let's go over what variables are. Alright. This first expression up here says a star plus another star minus 4 is a problem that we're going to have to solve for. And what I want you to do is let that star represent the number 6. Alright, so this is going to equal positive 6. So now what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to substitute in the 6 for these stars. So now my expression reads as 6 plus 6 minus 4. All I did is instead of the star, put a 6 in for it. Instead of that star, put a 6 in for it. Alright? And now, instead of having an expression like that with variables, right, symbols that represent other numbers, I've got 6 plus 6 minus 4. So, now that I have those numbers plugged in there, all I have to do is solve it. So, if I do 6 plus 6, I get 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. But usually you're not going to see expressions or equations written out with variables that are symbols like actual stars, maybe a smiley face. Okay, we're not going to use those. We're going to use letters. And a letter that's used all the time is the letter X. So now, let's say I have an expression like this, and instead of using a star to represent a value, I'm going to use the letter X. And it's really important, class, that now that we're using variables, you do not use an X when you multiply. Alright, because we're going to be using X's in our equations. So that's why you want to use a dot now instead of an X when you multiply. So, I've got X plus X minus 4. And what I want you to do is let X equal 5. Okay? So, all I'm going to do is, I'm going to plug in 5 for X. So, instead of X, I've got 5 plus X is now 5, and then minus 4. Alright, that's all you have to do for problems like this. So, now that I've just got values in, I'm going to solve. 5 plus 5 is 10. 10 minus 4 is going to give me 6. Alright? That's how you solve expressions like that. When you are given an expression with a variable, and then they give you what that variable represents, the value, all you have to do is plug in the number. Alright, it's that easy. Let's move this guy out of the way. Alright, now, I want you to use guess and check to solve for X here. Alright, so pause the video real fast. See if you can figure out what X is going to equal. Alright, it's going to be some value. X plus negative 2 equals 10. So I want you to figure out what number plus negative 2 equals 10. Go ahead. Alright, hopefully you paused it. So, hopefully you figured out that X must equal 12. Because if I plugged in now 12 for X, this equation would look like this. 12 plus negative 2 equals 10. And that's exactly right. 12 plus negative 2 equals 10. But I don't want you to guess and check, because when you guess and check, it's going to take you a lot longer to solve a problem. And when we're dealing with values that get really big, guess and check's going to take forever, and you don't have that kind of time. So, what we're going to do is we're going to solve equations like that. Alright, but we're going to use something called inverse operations. Alright, now if you don't know what inverse operations are, they're operations that cancel each other out. Alright, so there's 4 operations, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Addition and subtraction are considered inverse operations. Alright, they switch. Right? If I add 6 and then I take away 6, I'm left with nothing. Alright, these cancel each other out. Same thing with multiplication and division. And get used to me using a dot to represent multiplication, because, like I said earlier in that last slide, You're not going to use x anymore to represent multiplication because you're going to see the letter x a lot when we're working with variables. So, addition and subtraction are inverse operations. They cancel each other out. Multiplication and division are also inverse operations, so these are going to cancel each other out. And this is why over here. If you look, I start with positive 5 plus 8, and the opposite of plus 8 would be minus 8. And what I would be left with is the original number, because this right here cancels out the other one, right? If I give you $8, then I take $8 away, you're going to be left with what we started with, and it's going to be 5. Alright, and if you solved it, 5 plus 8 is 13. 13 minus 8 is going to give us 5. Same thing with multiplication and division. They're going to cancel each other out, so you're going to be left with the original value. 10 times 3 divided by 3 equals 10. Right? These are inverse operations. They're going to cancel each other out. 10 times 3 is 30. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So I'm left with the value I started with at the very beginning. Alright, so what we need to do is make sure we get used to using inverse operations. Alright, they're pretty slick. I like them. Oh, and I think these floorboards on my deck are a little bit too far apart because they're getting stuck. But anyway. Alright, oh, and this kind of got rubbed off a little bit, so I'm going to need to fix it. Same thing with this 4. Oh no. It's gotta look good. So, first, this expression up here. We've got x minus 3 equals 7. Alright. The first thing that we have got to do is cancel out that minus 3. Alright. So, I need to cancel out minus 3. Well, what's the opposite of subtraction? Addition. So, instead of minus 3, I'm going to write a little plus 3 underneath it. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side of the equal sign. Right? Now, class, I want you to think about these equations like there are two separate sides to them. One side of the equal sign and the other side of the equal sign. So we've got the left of the equal sign and the right of the equal sign. Alright, now this is extremely important. I'm not writing this down on the whiteboard, so write this down in your notes. Whatever you do to one side of an equation, you have got to do to the other side of an equation. Alright? Again, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have got to do to the other side of the equation. So, since I'm adding 3 on that side, I also have to add 3 on this side. Well, the minus 3 and the plus 3, those are going to cancel out, right? Because if I take away 3 and then I add 3, I'm left with nothing. So these are going to cancel. Then all I'm going to be left with is that x right there. So I'm going to bring that x down. And now on this side, I have to do 7 plus 3, and I'm going to get 10. There's my answer. So if you went back and you plugged in 10 for x, you would see that the equation would be read as 10 minus 3 equals 7. That makes sense, that's right. So x must equal 10. Now let's try that with x plus 2 equals 5. Let's fix this. Okay, we separate these. Oh, in class, this is why it's called a one-step equation, because I had to do one step to solve for the variable. I had to add 3 to both sides. One step, and I get my answer. Alright? So, next one. X plus 2 equals 5. Well, the opposite of addition is subtraction. So now, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Alright? The plus 2 and the minus 2, those are going to cancel each other out. And all I'm left with is, again, x. And then on the right side of the equation, I got 5 minus 2, which is going to give me 3. So x must equal 3. And if you plug this back in to check your work, 3 plus 2 is 5. Yeah, that's exactly right. So that makes sense. Alright, this next one. Now class, you are going to see this all the time. Right? That kind of looks like it's a fraction. Okay? But what that really means is division. Alright? A fraction bar, that line, means the same thing as division. So you're not always going to see that dividing sign. Alright, sometimes you might see this. Sometimes you might see a slash to represent division. And then, like I said before, you might see that sign. Alright, but usually, especially when you're dealing with equations like this that you have to balance, you're going to see that sign up there. Okay, so I've got, I'm getting a marker on myself, x divided by 8. Well, the opposite of divided by is multiplied by. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to multiply this side by 8 and then multiply this side by 8. Again, remember there are 2 sides to every equation. Divided by 8 and times 8, those are opposites. They're inverse operations. They're going to cancel out. All we're going to be left with is that x. And then over here we've got 3 times 8, which is 24. Alright, so x equals 24. Let's check. 24 divided by 8 equals 3. That's exactly right. So this must be our answer. Next one. We've got 4x equals 20. Now, what this means, class, alright, is that we have 4 x's. Alright, we've got 4 x's. Also, there is no operation in between that 4 and that x. So that means we must have a multiplication sign in between those. Remember, that's the only operation that you're not always going to see, right? In between a number and a parentheses, you might not see an operation. And if you don't see it, that means you have to use multiplication. Same thing with this. This means 4 times x equals 20. We need to figure out what x is. Well, the opposite of multiplication is division. So, I am going to divide this side by 4. And I'm going to divide that side over there by 4. And I'm going to draw a line in here to separate both sides of the equation. Okay? Well, check it out. 4x divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, right? 1x. And that's going to equal, let me fix this. That's going to equal 20 divided by 4. And 20 divided by 4 is going to be 5. But you are rarely going to see a 1 attached to an x if that x is all by itself. Alright? You're rarely, if ever, going to see a 1 attached to an x, because 1 times something is going to give you the exact same answer. So there's really no need to include that 1. So I'm going to erase it. X equals 5. So if you go back in here and check, 4 times 5 is 20. That's exactly right. Next one. X minus 8 equals negative 4. Alright, so I'm going to divide this into 2 sides. The opposite of minus 8 is going to be plus 8. And I'm going to do that to both sides, because remember, whatever you do to one side, you've got to do the other. And minus 8 and plus 8 are opposites. Inverse operations, they're going to cancel out. All I'm going to be left with is x. And then over here I've got negative 4 plus 8. This is why it was so important to learn how to add and subtract, multiply and divide positive and negative numbers, because we're going to use that a lot now in this second unit. Negative 4 plus 8 is going to give me positive 4. And if I plug positive 4 into the equation again, what's 4 minus 8? Negative 4. So that must be the answer. Next one. Now, because we're dealing with negatives, remember I always wanted you to associate whether or not that number is positive or negative by the sign that is to the left of it. Alright, so the opposite of negative 3 would be positive 3, right? And like I said before, positive signs and addition signs mean the same thing. Subtraction signs and negative signs mean the same thing. The opposite of negative 3 or minus 3 is going to be plus 3. And since I did that on the left side of the equal sign, I also did that on the right side of the equal sign. Alright, so here's my equal sign. These are going to cancel out because negative 3 and positive 3 are opposites. So I'm only going to be left with x. And negative 10 plus 3 is going to give me negative 7. So if I go back in and plug in negative 7 for x, negative 7 plus negative 3 equals negative 10. That's exactly right. So I solved the problem correctly. One more slide, guys. Alright, promise. Now, these 6, I want you guys to give these a shot. Alright, try and work them out, see what you get, pause the video, alright, and then I'll be right back to go over the answers. Alright, hopefully you gave these a shot, alright, because if you're practicing these when I give you an opportunity to in these videos, you're probably going to do better on the quizzes. Alright, so over here, I'm getting sweaty. We've got x divided by negative 2 equals 6. Well, the opposite class of divided by negative 2 would be times negative 2. And that's really important, class, that you know what, I'm going to figure out where I'm going to stick that sign. I'm just going to put this right up here, times 2. And remember, whoop, didn't leave myself any room. It's divided by negative 2, so the opposite would be times negative 2. So I'm going to write in here times negative 2 times negative 2. Inverse operations, right? Divided by negative 2 and times negative 2. Those are opposites, those are inverses, so they're going to cancel each other out. All I'm going to be left with then is x. And what is 6 times negative 2? Negative 12. Alright, so there's our first answer. Next one. I've got negative 5 times x. Well, the opposite of multiplication is going to be division. So, instead of times negative 5, we are going to make this divided by negative 5. And I'm going to do that to both sides. So, again, there are two sides to every equation. The left side of the equal sign and the right side. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is going to give me positive 1. So I'm going to get positive 1x. But again, you're not going to write that 1 next to the x. So we're just going to have x. And negative 45 divided by negative 5 is going to give me positive 9. So if I plug it back in, negative 5 times positive 9 is negative 45. There's our answer. Next one over here. Now, remember, I told you, before you can do anything to an equation, even before we started working with the variables, when we were adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, right, integers, I said that if you have a minus and negative sign right next to each other, first thing you have to do before you can even think about solving it is you have to combine those. Alright, so I'm going to rewrite the equation as x, because minus and negative are going to turn into an addition sign, plus 7 equals 2. So now I can use inverse operations to solve. The opposite of plus 7 is going to be negative 7 or minus 7. So I'm going to do minus 7 on both sides. Remember, there's two sides to every equation. Plus 7 and minus 7 are going to cancel. I'm only going to be left with x. And 2 minus 7 is going to give me negative 5. Alright, last three. Let's see if we can get them. We have x plus negative 5. So again, remember, I want you to think about the values in terms of the sign to the left of it. Even though this is addition, we're not going to do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. Think about this 5 in terms of the sign to the left of it. Well, the opposite of negative 5, or the inverse, would be plus 5, alright, or positive 5. So this is going to be plus 5 on this side, plus 5 on that side. Remember, there's two sides to every equation. These are going to cancel. Now all I'm going to be left with is x. Then over here I've got negative 4 plus 5, and that's going to give me positive 1. 1 plus negative 5 is negative 4. That's exactly right. Alright, home stretch. X divided by negative 3. The opposite of divided by negative 3 is going to be times negative 3. Same thing on this side. Times negative 3. These are going to cancel out. Boom. Boom. Gone. Bring this equal sign down. All we're left with is x. And negative 3 times negative 6, or sorry, negative 6 times negative 3 is going to be positive 18. Alright, and if you plug that in, 18 divided by negative 3 is negative 6. And the last one, I have a feeling you guys got this. Negative 9x. Remember, that's multiplication in between that integer and that variable, because we can't see it. The opposite of multiplication is division. So, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to divide by negative 9. So I'm going to divide this side by negative 9. I'm going to bring that equal sign down. And this line is going to separate both sides, because if you ever do to one side, you got to do the other. These are going to cancel out. All I'm going to be left with is x. And over here, 27 divided by negative 9 is going to be negative 3. Alright, so it's real important, class. If you did not write down some of the things I was speaking about, you go back in the video and you write them down, because I'm not going to write everything on these boards. Alright, I'm not going to have room. So, if you didn't get that stuff down, go back, listen to what I was saying, and get that stuff in your notes. Alright, hopefully you guys rock these quizzes tomorrow, and see you soon. Later.